The mashed potato smell of the banquet hall still clung to my jacket when I finally understood that my marriage had been over for months and I was the last one at the table to hear about it. I'm Danny. For 6 years I turned wrenches on diesel engines at a truck shop off Route 9. Came home with grease under my nails and a paycheck that never impressed anybody. And I loved a woman named Claire who sold houses in blazers that cost more than my toolbox. That night was supposed to be her big night. Her firm's year-end gala in a hotel ballroom with chandeliers and a carving station. And I'd rented a suit and shaved twice and practiced small talk in the truck like a nervous kid. I wanted to be proud of her. I was proud of her. That was always my whole problem. I kept being proud of a person who'd quietly stopped being proud of me. The concrete thing, the thing I keep circling back to, happened 3 weeks before the gala. I was digging in her purse for a stick of gum on a long drive to her cousin's christening, and my fingers found a plastic hotel keycard tucked into the little zipper pocket where she keeps her lip stuff. A keycard from the Ridgeline Hotel downtown, the kind with a magnetic strip and a room number scratched into the black band in ballpoint, 414. We live 20 minutes from downtown. There was no reason on this earth for my wife to have a room key to a hotel in her own city. I held it up and asked her about it, and she didn't even flinch, which should have been my first clue because innocent people flinch. She said the brokerage had booked a block of rooms for a 2-day open house training weekend, that management had them stay overnight so they'd be sharp for the early sessions, and that she'd forgotten to drop the key at the front desk on her way out. She said it so smoothly, with that little laugh she uses when she thinks you're being cute and paranoid, that I put the card back and apologized for going through her purse. Apologized. I actually said I was sorry for finding it. That's the man I was. So at the gala, when they called Claire Whitaker up to accept Agent of the Year and she floated to the stage in a dress I'd never seen, I clapped harder than anybody in that room. And then she started talking. She thanked her mentor, thanked her team, thanked the market, and then she talked about growth. She said the version of her from 6 years ago wouldn't recognize this woman. She said some people spend their lives comfortable and small, and some people decide they were built for more, and she'd finally decided which one she was going to be. The whole room went warm and misty and lifted their glasses to her, and I sat at table 9 with my rented cuffs and I felt every single word land on me like a coin dropped from a great height. She never said my name. She never once looked at me. Her mother, 2 seats down, patted my hand the way you pat a dog that's about to be put outside for the night. We didn't fight in the ballroom. Claire and I never fought in front of people. She saved that for the car, the driveway, the kitchen at midnight where the neighbors couldn't hear. We fought on the way home, and by fought I mean I asked her, quietly, why she talked about her life like I wasn't in it. And she said the words I'd been dreading without knowing I was dreading them. She said she'd made peace, a long time ago, with the fact that she'd outgrown this marriage. She said it the way you'd mention you'd outgrown a coat. And here's the thing you have to understand about us, the thing that makes the whole night make sense. We had this fight before. Not those exact words, but the shape of it, her cold and certain, me wounded and reaching. And every single time I came back, I'd sleep in the truck or drive around for an hour and then I'd come back through the door with an apology I didn't know. Because I was terrified of the silence, terrified of the empty house, terrified of being the man whose wife left him. She thought this was another one of those nights. She went upstairs, got in bed on my side like she always did after a fight, and went to sleep certain that by breakfast I'd be downstairs making coffee and folding myself back into something small enough to keep. I sat in the garage instead, in the dark, surrounded by the shelving units I'd built and the motorcycle I never finished and the smell of oil and cold concrete. And I let myself remember everything I'd been paying not to see. I remembered the keycard, of course, but once I pulled that thread the whole sweater came apart. I remembered how her phone had lived on Do Not Disturb for the better part of a year, screen down on every surface, flipping face down the second I walked into a room like a reflex she couldn't control. I remembered the spin classes she suddenly couldn't miss, 3 nights a week, and a new instructor she mentioned exactly once and then never again, which was strange because Claire talked about everything twice. I remembered the girls' nights that started at 9 and ended at 2, and how she'd come home smelling like a bar I'd never been to. A cologne that wasn't mine settled into the collar of a coat she'd hang up before I could get a real breath of it. I remembered a name that kept surfacing and sinking: Marcus, a mortgage broker her office partnered with, Marcus who could close anything, Marcus who was so easy to work with, Marcus whose name she said a little too carefully, like a word she was trying not to overuse in front of me. And I remembered the small deaths, the ones that don't leave receipts. The way she stopped reaching for my hand at crosswalks somewhere in the last year and never started again. The way she turned her back to me in bed and built a wall of blanket down the middle. The way she laughed harder at other men's jokes than she ever laughed at anything I said. A big bright laugh with her hand on a forearm that wasn't mine. I used to fix the leak under her sink before she noticed it was dripping. I used to warm her side of the bed on January nights and buy the dark chocolate with the sea salt when she'd had a hard closing. That kind of love doesn't post well. It doesn't win Agent of the Year. It just holds a house up quietly while the person inside it packs to leave. I didn't sleep. Somewhere around 4 in the morning I went upstairs and stood in the doorway watching her breathe, curled up on my side of the bed, peaceful as anything, and I understood that she was peaceful because in her mind the hard part was over. She'd said the sentence. All that was left was to wait for me to come back so she could forgive me and keep the life she liked and the exit she was building on the side. And that's when I stopped feeling like a man who'd been dumped and started feeling like a man who'd been used as a placeholder. A warm body to hold the marriage open while she found her replacement without ever having to be the villain. So I didn't come back. I did the opposite of coming back. In the gray before sunrise I packed a duffel with a few shirts, my work boots, my jeans, and the framed photo of my old dog Boone from back when I lived alone and peace didn't feel like a foreign country. And then I did the thing she never in 1,000 years expected. I twisted my wedding ring off my finger. The ring I'd worn so long, there was a pale band of skin under it, and I set it in the center of the kitchen table where she couldn't miss it. I set my house keys down next to it, the keys to the little gray house on Alder Street that I'd re-roofed and rewired and repainted twice with my own 2 hands. And between the ring and the keys I left one note. I won't pretend it was poetry. I wrote that I'd finally taken her at her word, that if she'd outgrown me, she could have the whole thing to herself, and that I was the one leaving this time, and I wasn't coming back to be forgiven. For lines. No return address. I left the porch light off behind me and I drove. She found it around 7. I know because that's when the phone started. She woke up to an empty bed and came downstairs expecting coffee and an apology. And instead she found a ring, a set of keys, and a note from a man who was already gone. And the woman who could stand up in a ballroom and calmly announce she'd outgrown her husband, that woman broke. The first call I let ring out. The first voicemail was almost steady, telling me this was ridiculous, asking where I'd run off to, telling me to stop being dramatic and come home so we could talk. The second voicemail cracked in the middle. The third one wasn't a voicemail at all, it was her sobbing into the phone, saying my name over and over, saying she found the ring, she found the note, please call her back. She didn't mean it like that. I'd taken it wrong. She was freaking out. 6 years I'd have crawled over glass for that catch in her voice. That morning I sat in a diner 2 towns over with coffee that tasted like burnt hope and I let the phone buzz itself in circles on the vinyl seat. And I felt the strangest, quietest thing settle into my chest. Not triumph, not even anger, just still. I didn't go to work. I called in a family emergency, and I figured a marriage bleeding out on a kitchen table qualifies. I checked into a motel on the edge of town, cash, the kind of place where the ice machine screams and the bedspread feels like it was washed in sand, and I turned my phone off and I slept for 11 hours for the first time in a year. When I turned it back on, the flood was waiting. 17 missed calls. A text from her sister Steph. Was I okay? Claire was a wreck. Could I please just call her? No apology in it. Just clean up the family closing ranks to manage the damage the way they always did. And underneath the calls, a voicemail where Claire's voice had gone from panic to venom in a single breath. How dare I ghost my wife after everything she'd done for us? I was proving exactly why we were stuck. I was acting like a child. That's the tell with her. She could never just feel a thing. She had to manage it, narrate it, perform it, aim it. Sympathy 1 hour, contempt the next, whatever might get the door open. I might have wavered. I want to be honest. Sitting in that motel with the light buzzing, I might have talked myself into believing I'd overreacted, that a person doesn't blow up a 6-year marriage over a keycard and a cold speech. But the next morning the truth came looking for me, and it came from a number I didn't recognize. A photo first. Claire in a booth at a place called The Anchor, a bar down by the river I'd never once been invited to, and her hand was flat on the thigh of a man leaning in to whisper in her ear, and she was laughing that big bright laugh, the one that was never for me. Underneath it, one line. You deserve to know what she's been doing while she plays the heartbroken wife. No name. I sat there with my thumb hovering over that screen like pressing too hard might shatter it, and I already knew the man's face before my brain caught up. Marcus. Marcus, the mortgage broker. Marcus, who could close anything. An hour later, the same number sent a video. Same bar, same booth, except this time there was no ambiguity to argue with, no innocent read to reach for, just my wife kissing another man in public like a woman who'd already decided she was single, or maybe like a woman who'd never really believed the vows meant anything in the first place. And then the number sent one more message, and this was the twist that took the ground out from under me a second time. It was from a woman named Bethany. She said she was Marcus's fiancée. She'd found the same things in his phone that I'd been finding in Claire's for a year. The do not disturb, the late closings that ran past midnight, a keycard for room 414 at the Ridgeline. She'd been putting it together the same weeks I had, from the other side of the same lie. She wasn't sending me those pictures to hurt me. She was sending them because she'd been alone with the knowing and she couldn't stand being the only one still pretending. 2 people, 2 rings. Both of us set up to hold a marriage open while our partners built exits in the dark. I called Bethany, and we talked for an hour, 2 strangers stitching a map out of each other's evidence. She's the one who told me the part one hadn't seen yet, the part that turned my grief into something colder and clearer. Claire hadn't been drifting. Claire had been planning. Bethany had a friend at the courthouse, and that friend had seen Claire's name on a consultation calendar at a family law firm downtown. 6 weeks back, well before the gala, before the speech, before the fight she thought was routine. My wife had already sat across a desk from a divorce attorney and asked her questions. And Bethany, who understood real estate the way Claire did, told me what Claire was almost certainly going to try for. The house. The little gray house on Alder Street. She was going to outgrow me quietly, keep the affair tidy, wait until she'd stockpiled enough sympathy from her family and her office, and then leave gracefully on her own schedule. The strong, evolved woman who tried her best with a man who just couldn't keep up, and walk away with the house I'd rebuilt with my hands while I got to be the sad footnote in her growth story. She'd rehearsed the ballroom speech. She'd rehearsed the outgrew the marriage line. The only thing she hadn't rehearsed was a version of me who left first. That's what all the calls really were. Not love. Not even guilt. Panic because I'd broken her timeline. She needed me home so the story could go the way she'd written it. Needed me groveling at the kitchen table so she could be the one to end it on camera, in front of her family, as the merciful one. My ring and my keys and my 4-line note had ripped the script out of her hands, and now she was improvising, and Claire has never once in her life been good at improvising honesty. I stopped answering entirely after that, but I did make 2 calls of my own. I called a lawyer Bethany recommended, and I put a hold on any move against the house before Claire's could land, and I made sure the man who rewired and re-roofed and rebuilt that place wasn't going to hand it over as a parting gift for the privilege of being cheated on. And then I called my buddy Pete from the shop, who'd offered me his family's cabin up at Miller's Reach a year back, half joking, and I'd laughed and asked why on earth I'd ever need a place to disappear to, and he just shrugged and said sometimes the storm doesn't hit where you expect. I understood him now. I told him I needed the key. He drove it out to the motel himself and didn't ask a single question, and that quiet decency almost undid me more than any of Claire's screaming had. The cabin wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a porch that leaned, self-service that came and went with the wind, and the smell of pine in every board. But nobody there needed me to be smaller. Nobody flipped a phone face down when I walked in. I spent the first few days in a silence I'd forgotten existed. Not the punishing silence Claire used to deploy in our arguments, the one designed to make you crawl, but the healing kind, the kind that doesn't want anything from you. I drank bad coffee on the porch and watched the sun climb over the ridge like it had somewhere to be. I read paperbacks that had been swelling in the damp for years. I fixed the leaning porch step because I couldn't help myself, and for the first time in a long time fixing something felt like a gift I was giving instead of a debt I was paying. Claire found the cabin eventually, a small town leaks, and Steph knew Pete's family. She showed up one night, headlights sweeping across the pines, and she knocked, soft at first and then hard, and she talked at the door for a long time. She said she'd barely slept. She said I'd twisted her words, that the ballroom thing came out wrong, that the man at the anchor meant nothing, that it was one stupid night in a spiral, and she said that last part before I'd ever told her I knew about him, which meant she'd known there was a video, known she'd been seen, and had been sitting on the confession waiting to see how little of it she'd have to give up. She said she didn't expect to be seen. That was the truest thing she said all night, and she didn't even know it. She wanted freedom without the cost of it. She wanted to keep the house and the story and the sympathy and Marcus too, and she wanted a husband who'd wait at the door like he always had. I lay on that squeaky cabin bed and listened to her knock, and I didn't move, and after a while the knocking stopped and the headlights swung back down the mountain, and I felt the last thread of the old me let go. There were emails after that, long ones typed at 3 in the morning, all lowercase, the kind people write from the floor. She rebuilt history in them, called me unreachable and cruel, said I'd given up too fast, said we owed it to ourselves to process this like adults. And I read them all the way through, more than once, looking for one specific thing, and it was never there. Not in the voicemails, not in the texts, not in the emails. Not one time did she say she loved me. She said she missed the way things were. She said the silence was making her question everything. She said I'd made her feel like the bad guy. It was all fallout, all optics, all her. And I finally understood the difference between us that had been there the whole time. I missed a marriage that had been real to me, and she missed a marriage she could manage. I mourned a person. She mourned a role that was suddenly going unfilled. I didn't answer the emails. I let the lawyers talk, and it turned out that a keycard and a courthouse calendar, and a fiancée named Bethany willing to tell the truth made for a very short negotiation. I kept the house on Alder Street. I don't know yet if I'll live in it or sell it. Some floorboards hold too much. But it's mine, the way it always should have been, carved initials and all. And then, the way life does when you finally stop white-knuckling it, something small and good walked up the cabin road. Her name is Nora, and she runs the little hardware and bait store at the bottom of the reach, and she came up one afternoon because Pete had mentioned somebody was staying at the cabin who might need a propane fitting. She stayed 2 hours on the leaning porch, and we talked about nothing. Engines, weather, the paperback swelling in the damp, and it was the first conversation in years that didn't feel like a performance I could fail. There was no scorecard in it. No comparing me to some lawyer or some broker with a better watch. When she left, she looked back at the porch and said I didn't seem broken to her, just like a man who'd finally gotten out of the wrong room. Months later, we're still talking, still slow, still simple, two people meeting each other where they actually stand instead of where they're trying to impress from. I think about that kitchen table sometimes, the ring, the keys, the 4 lines. Claire thought she was ending things on her terms, in a ballroom, in front of an audience, the evolved woman setting down the weight of a smaller man. She thought I'd fight the way I always fought and come back the way I always came back. She never once considered that the man who kept coming home might just, one gray morning, decide to keep driving. She lost somebody who would have done anything to love her. And I finally found the quiet on the other side of the door, the kind that comes when you stop mistaking your own patience for a virtue and start seeing it for the cage it was. Let her tell her version. Let her spin it however she needs to. I know the truth. I set my ring on the table, and for the first time in 6 years my hands felt light.